Hey readers, welcome back to Dragons and Spaceships. I'm your host Brandy, and today we are diving into a story that is emotional, nostalgic, and full of heart. Our featured book this week is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren, a beautifully layered story about first love, second chances, and the language that connects us even when everything else is falling apart. If you've read any of Christina Lauren's rom-coms like The Unhoneymooners or Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, you know this author can write chemistry like nobody else. But Love in Other Words hits a little differently. It's quieter, more introspective, and deeply emotional. It's not just a love story. It's about memory, grief, and how sometimes the words we don't say can define our lives as much as the ones we do. But before we dig into our main feature, let's shine a quick spotlight on a book that has been generating some serious buzz right now. The book in question is A Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall, a sweeping emotional novel set in the English countryside in the 1950s through the 60s. The story centers on Beth, who built her life on a family sheep farm with her husband Frank, all while holding on to a past love, the man who left her as a teenager. Then his return into her life opens up secrets, loss, and questions of loyalty, love, and what it means to keep believing in redemption. This one has touches of family drama, romance, and thriller. It's been described as a love story with pace and twists of a thriller. If you're someone who loves a layered, emotional read with both history and heart, this one's already making waves. If you're looking for your next book club pick or just a deeply emotional read to sink into, Broken Country might just be your perfect next stop. But let's hop back into our main feature. Love in Other Words moves between two timelines, then and now, weaving together the story of Macy and Elliot. In the then chapters, we watch Macy as a bookish, slightly awkward teenage girl who just lost her mother. Her father buys a cabin in the small town of Healdsburg, California, a quiet escape from grief and city life. And next door lives Elliot Petropoulos, the boy who changes everything. He's curious, kind, a little nerdy, and just as obsessed with books and words as Macy is. The two form a friendship built on stories, lists, and shared silences that slowly, inevitably turns into something deeper. But you fast forward to the now, Macy is in her late 20s working as a pediatrics resident, seemingly content but emotionally closed off. She's engaged to another man, living a safe, predictable life until she runs into Elliot again. The story alternates between past and present, revealing what happened to break them apart and what it means to find your way back to someone after years of silence. What's beautiful about this structure is how it mirrors memory itself, fragmented, tender, and always circling back to the moments that shaped you. But let's go ahead and talk about the heart of this book, Macy and Elliot. Macy Sorensen is thoughtful, reserved, and still haunted by loss. She's someone who learned to survive by keeping her emotions under control. Losing her mother at a young age made her grow up fast, and while she's successful and strong, she's also guarded. You can feel how she's built walls around herself, walls only one person ever really knew how to climb. That person is Elliot. He's earnest, emotional, and completely open-hearted. He's the kind of character who feels everything deeply and wears it on his sleeve. As a teenager, his love for Macy is pure and patient. As an adult, it's complicated by guilt and longing. Their connection is built on words, literally. They share books, talk about definitions, and create their own language. It's intellectual and emotional all at once, the kind of bond that goes beyond attraction. Now, the side characters, we have Macy's father, her fiancé Sean, and Elliot's big chaotic family, add richness and realism. Macy's father represents love expressed through protection rather than emotion, while Sean shows what it looks like to choose comfort over passion. But no matter how much life changes, Macy and Elliot's story is the gravitational pull of this novel, one that keeps circling back to where it all began. One of the most beautiful things about Love in Other Words is how it explores language, not just spoken words, but the emotional language between people. The title itself hints at this, the idea that love is expressed in so many ways, through silence, through memory, throughout all the other words we can't quite say out loud. At its core, this is a story about grief and healing. Both Macy and Elliot are shaped by loss, Macy by her mother's death, and Elliot by the pain of losing Macy. Christina Lauren does a stunning job showing how grief doesn't always look like sadness. Sometimes it looks like avoidance or pretending you're fine when you're not. There's also the theme of first love, how those early connections imprint on us. The way Macy and Elliot fall in love as teenagers feels so authentic, awkward, and intense, world-defining. But the story asks, can that kind of love survive real life, or does it only live in memory? And maybe the most powerful theme of all is forgiveness. Learning to forgive others, yes, but also forgiving yourself for the choices you made when you didn't know better. That's what gives this book its emotional punch. Christina Lauren's writing in Love and Other Words is gentle but deeply immersive. They have this uncanny ability to capture the feeling of falling in love for the first time, the nervous laughter, the long pauses, the electricity of a single glance. The alternating timeline gives the story a slow burn rhythm, one that keeps you invested without rushing the payoff. Every chapter adds another layer, another clue to what went wrong and why. The tone is nostalgic without being overly sentimental. It feels like looking through old photos, beautiful, bittersweet, and honest. And even though this is technically a romance novel, it's also a story about self-discovery. The love story is central, but it's equally about learning to reopen your heart after you've spent years keeping it closed. So here's what I want to ask you. Do you believe that people can find their way back to each other after years apart? And do you think first loves ever really fade, or do they just live somewhere quiet inside of us? Love and Other Words reminded me that love isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, and written between the lines. If you've read this one, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Was Macy right to protect herself the way she did, or should she have fought harder for what she and Elliot had? All right, Book Dragons, time to roar about a hot new release you'll want to mark your calendars for. Next on our radar is Woman Down, the upcoming thriller from Colleen Hoover. According to the announcement, the story follows Petra Rose, a writer whose career falls apart after a film adaptation of her work goes viral in all the wrong reasons. Desperate, she retreats to a remote lakeside cabin to finish her novel, only to have a detective unexpectedly show up and blur the lines between fiction and reality. The book is officially slated for release on January 13th of 2026. If you're a fan of Hoover's emotionally roller coasters and twisty narratives, think Verity, this one promises to deliver that same tension and heart-pounding suspense. That's your Dragon's Roar for this week. Keep your claws sharp and your bookmarks ready, because when this one lands, it's going to fly off the shelves. Love and Other Words is one of those stories that sneaks up on you. It's about the books that shape us, the words that stay with us, and the people who feel like home even after years apart. It's emotional without being heavy, romantic without being cliche, and completely unforgettable. If you are a fan of second chance love stories that actually feel earned, or if you just want to get lost in something heartfelt and human, this one is a must-read. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Dragons and Spaceships. Don't forget to subscribe, share the episode, and tag us with your favorite quotes from Love and Other Words. Until next time, keep reading, stay curious, and may your TBR pile never stop growing.